October 1907. Wall Street is on the verge of complete catastrophic collapse. Crowds of panicked citizens fill the streets of New York, desperate to pull their life savings out of failing banks. Inside the Knickerbocker Trust Company, panic turns to absolute terror. The doors lock shut. The money is gone. This is not just a market crash. It is the total breakdown of the American financial system. With no government reserve or central bank to stop the bleeding, a single private citizen, billionaire tycoon J.P. Morgan, is forced to step in. He locks the city's top bankers inside his private library, refusing to let them leave until they agree to put up their own money to bail out the system. It was a humiliating, terrifying realization. The wealthiest, fastest-growing nation on Earth was running its entire economy on a knife's edge. And without a drastic, permanent change, the next crash would destroy the United States forever. To understand how America arrived at this terrifying cliff, we must examine the unique and dangerously fragile economic architecture of the Gilded Age. By the early 1900s, the United States was an unstoppable industrial powerhouse, rapidly overtaking the great empires of Europe. Yet, its financial foundation was shockingly primitive. Unlike Great Britain, France, or Germany, America did not have a central bank. Ever since President Andrew Jackson dismantled the Second Bank of the United States in the 1830s, Americans harbored a deep, almost religious distrust of centralized financial power. The common belief was that a central bank would serve only the wealthy elites of Wall Street, while systematically crushing the hard-working farmers and small businessmen of the South and West. Consequently, the country operated under a highly fragmented system of over 20,000 independent local banks. Each of these institutions had to maintain its own cash reserves. If a panic occurred in one city, banks would instinctively hoard their cash to protect themselves, starving the rest of the nation of liquidity. It was a system built for stability in calm waters, but virtually guaranteed to shatter in a storm. The Panic of 1907 was that storm, and it exposed a fundamental truth. America was a financial giant, built on a foundation of sand. Among the wealthy elite watching this disaster unfold was a man who saw the crisis coming years before it hit. His name was Paul Warburg. Born in Hamburg, Germany, in 1868, Warburg was raised in an elite, multi-generational banking dynasty. He was not merely a wealthy heir, he was a brilliant financial scholar who spent his youth studying the intricate, highly structured machinery of European central banking. In 1902, after marrying Nina Loeb, the daughter of a prominent American investment banker, Warburg moved to New York and joined the prestigious Wall Street firm of Kuhn, Loeb and Company. When Warburg first analyzed the American banking system, he was absolutely horrified. He famously remarked that America's financial structure was in the same primitive stage of development as Europe's had been during the Middle Ages. In Europe, central banks acted as a collective reservoir, pooling cash reserves to support any individual bank facing a sudden, unexpected run. In America, every bank fought for itself, which only accelerated panics. Warburg was not a typical Wall Street speculator. He did not care about quick stock profits. Instead, he became obsessed with a single, massive mission: to completely rebuild the American monetary system from scratch. But as an immigrant who spoke with a thick German accent, Warburg faced an uphill battle. To the American public, he was an outsider, a Wall Street insider, and a representative of the European banking elites they deeply distrusted. For years, Warburg published pamphlets, wrote academic papers, and delivered speeches, arguing tirelessly for the creation of what he called a United Reserve Bank. He explained that a modern economy required an elastic currency, a money supply that could smoothly expand during harvests or economic stress and contract during quiet periods, rather than being rigidly bound to a fixed supply of physical gold. But his ideas were met with fierce resistance. To the average American, a central bank sounded like a financial monarchy, a tool for tycoons to manipulate interest rates and control the nation's wealth. The turning point came when political leaders realized that the Panic of 1907 could repeat itself at any moment, with even more devastating consequences. Senator Nelson Aldrich, the powerful chairman of the National Monetary Commission, recognized that America's financial system was a ticking time bomb. He privately contacted Warburg. Aldrich knew that any public congressional debate to design a central bank would be paralyzed by political infighting and media sensationalism. They needed a plan drafted in absolute secrecy, free from public scrutiny. On a chilly night in November 1910, a select group of the nation's most powerful financiers met at a quiet railway station in Hoboken, New Jersey. To avoid detection by reporters, they boarded a private train car using only their first names, telling onlookers they were merely going on a duck hunting trip. Their destination was Jekyll Island, an exclusive, isolated resort off the coast of Georgia. For 10 intense days, this small group of men, including Paul Warburg, Senator Aldrich, Frank Vanderlip of National City Bank, and Henry Davison of J.P. Morgan and Company, worked in complete isolation. Warburg was the undisputed intellectual engine of the Jekyll Island meeting. While the American politicians and bankers struggled to find a compromise, Warburg drew from his deep knowledge of European banking. He knew that a single, centralized European-style bank would never fly in the freedom-loving, anti-monopoly culture of the United States. Instead, he proposed a brilliant, complex compromise, a decentralized system of regional reserve banks scattered across the country, all tied together and overseen by a central board in Washington, D.C. This structure would allow local banks to retain their independence, while still creating a massive, unified emergency reservoir of cash. The resulting proposal was named the Aldrich Plan. It was a masterclass in financial engineering, but it faced a massive political hurdle. Senator Aldrich was a controversial Republican billionaire ally, and when the Democrats took control of the White House and Congress in 1912 under President Woodrow Wilson, the plan seemed completely dead. However, the core financial reality had not changed. The Democrats knew they had to fix the banking system, but they could not be seen passing a bill designed by Wall Street elites on Jekyll Island. To solve this, Democratic Representative Carter Glass and President Wilson took Warburg's structural design, increased the government's regulatory control over the central board, and rebranded it. The Aldrich Plan was quietly rewritten, emerging as the Federal Reserve Act. Despite the political theater, the underlying machinery was almost entirely Paul Warburg's design. By late December 1913, the battle over the bill reached a fever pitch. Wall Street bankers protested that the government would have too much control, while progressive populist politicians screamed that the banks would still hold the reins. The debate raged through the halls of Congress during the winter holidays, but President Woodrow Wilson stood firm. On December 23, 1913, with the pen in his hand, he signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. The immediate impact on American society and the global economy was profound. For the first time in its history, the United States had a unified monetary policy, a lender of last resort, and an elastic currency. The timing was nothing short of miraculous. Less than a year later, in the summer of 1914, World War I erupted in Europe. The global financial system suffered a catastrophic shock as European nations began liquidating their American assets and hoarding gold. Without the newly established Federal Reserve to stabilize the market and manage the money supply, the American economy likely would have collapsed under the pressure. Instead, the United States not only survived the shock but emerged from the First World War as the dominant financial superpower of the world, with the US dollar slowly replacing the British pound sterling as the global reserve currency. The modern financial era had begun, but the story of the father of the Federal Reserve did not end with his victory in 1913. As the Roaring Twenties swept across America, a wave of wild, uncontrolled stock speculation took over Wall Street. Once again, Warburg saw the impending disaster before anyone else. In March of 1929, he issued a chilling public warning, declaring that if the orgies of unrestrained speculation continued, a catastrophic collapse was inevitable, threatening to drag the entire nation into a deep depression. Instead of listening, the financial elite mocked him. He was openly jeered in boardrooms, called Old Gloomy Gus, and accused of trying to destroy American prosperity. Only 6 months later, the stock market crashed, ushering in the Great Depression. exactly as Warburg had predicted. It was a tragic testament to a man who understood the laws of money better than his contemporaries, yet was doomed to watch them ignore his warnings. Today, the Federal Reserve is the most powerful financial institution on Earth. A single decision by its chair to raise or lower interest rates can send shockwaves through global markets, influencing the price of everything from mortgages in Ohio to manufacturing in Tokyo. Yet, the brilliant architect who designed its blueprint, Paul Warburg, is largely forgotten by the public. He served as one of the first governors of the Federal Reserve Board, working tirelessly to guide the infant institution through its first critical years. He never sought fame, nor did he boast about his achievements. He simply saw a fatal flaw in the country he had adopted, and quietly built the machinery to fix it. Ultimately, Warburg's story forces us to look past the political theater and examine the silent forces that shape our daily lives. The Federal Reserve remains a subject of intense debate, praised by some as the savior of the economy and criticized by others as an elite cartel. But regardless of one's view, one truth remains. The modern world of money is built upon the foundation laid by a forgotten banker on a secret island over a century ago.